Hi everybody, welcome to another video. So today we're having a little look and a little play with the Porphis PHS135. Now the PHS135 is basically designed as a primer gun, a cheap or relatively cheap primer gun. So I will point out at this point, I didn't actually pay for this. Porphis actually give me the gun. I did pay for the postage of it because I got it with a few other things that I did pay for, but they actually give me this one free of charge. You can buy these things looking on their website. I'll put a link in the description. They're about $57 US. At the moment, I think they're doing free postage as well. So we're not talking about a lot of money. What's that? It's about 48 GB pounds at the moment, 46 GB pounds, 51, 52 euros, something like that. So not a lot of money. So I was quite interested to see what this would be like. Those that watch the channel will know that I've got a few of the Porphis. Well, I've got a lot of the Porphis guns now, all of which I've bought apart from this one. And I've been really impressed with the build quality of them, the performance of them, especially the performance of them, but the build quality is very good as well. Normally with some of the Chinese guns, the build quality is definitely lacking. So this one was explained to me, the PHS135, which is this gun here, and I also got at the same time a PHS155, which I will put a video up on soon. I'm running hopelessly behind on my videos. I'm getting guns faster than I'm doing videos at the moment, so I've got a bit of a backlog, but I will get round to them. Trust me, I will get round to them. But this particular gun, as I say, is quite a cheap gun for the Porphis range, so I was quite interested to see where the corners were cut. Really, you know, you don't get nothing for nothing, so I was interested to see where the corners have been cut. And one of the things that's immediately obvious with this is that during the time that I was using it quite heavily, you know, when I first got it to see what it would actually be like, some of the paint was removing on the, not the outside of the gun, but where you actually thread the tip on, you know, to clean it, etc. So you take the tip off to put the tip on, etc. But, you know, I'll put a couple of photos here now and you can see what I mean. So that's the only real thing I noticed. The build quality wise, it's actually not that bad. For the amount of money you're paying, I don't think it's that bad at all. I would put it probably on a par with the N-Tools 4000B. Now I know the N-Tools is actually a little bit cheaper than this, so that would be something that's relevant. But the N-Tools isn't designed for the same sort of market as this. This is available with a 1.8 tip, which is what you see me using now. They also do a 1.4 version, I think. Sorry, a 1.4 they definitely do because I've got it. I think they do a 1.6 version as well, but they definitely do a 1.4 and a 1.6. I'll put a link in the description so you can go to the website and you can see what they actually do it in. So it's designed for sort of what we call wet on wet. I think in the US you call it primer sealer, which is a thinner type of primer, or with a 1.8 like we have here for a higher build primer, a thicker primer. And what I noticed with this is that it actually flows quite a lot of material, which I really like for a primer gun. So I was supremely happy with it, using it for what I was using it for. Now, I had quite a few fairing parts to do, and fairing parts are a real pain really because they take loads and loads of time to prepare. That's why you don't see me doing many of them, because it just takes too long. It's just too much work for, you know, what's involved really, if that makes sense. Or what you get out of it. It's just too much work for it. But I had some stuff to do, and I would normally use, I got a little GF3, an ANI GF3 that I modified, and I would normally use something like that rather than a bigger primer gun, because if you've got too big a fan, you're just wasting lots of material with these sort of parts, because you know, nothing's flat or straight, so there's lots of nooks and crannies you have to get to, so having a big fan isn't really particularly beneficial. So I thought, well, I just got this gun, So I thought I would try it on primer, but I would cut the fan back. Towards the end, I put it on full fan so that you can see what full fan can do. And I have since used it on full fan, and I've been actually very impressed with the gun. With all their products, to be fair, I know I've got this for nothing, but the rest of the stuff I've bought, with all their products, I've been really impressed with. And this thing for the money is an absolute ideal primer gun. I can't say how long it will last, I really don't know. As I say, it's not particularly loads of money, so if it only lasted a year and a half, 2 years, I probably wouldn't be surprised. But it doesn't look like that's how long it's going to last. It looks like it's going to last a lot longer than that, but I can't say because I just haven't had it. But apart from the wearing on the coating, which is 2 different styles of coating, with their better quality guns, the PRD guns, the quality of the coating is excellent. I've cleaned one of my guns, the original 715 I had, has probably been apart 40 times, 45 times to be cleaned and checked over, etc. And it's as good today as it was when I got it. So you can see where the corners are cut on these. Effectively, they're not anodized; they're just coated. So the coating, when you're putting a screw through it, it's effectively metal against metal, and that's going to cause some coatings to come off. So don't expect it to last as well as the PRD series, but you're not paying so much money for it. As I say, about 57 quid all in, 57 US dollars all in. I think it's a bit of a bargain really for a primer gun, because it does throw out a lot of material, which is absolutely ideal. So it left me wondering at the end of this really why I needed a modified GF3, because I've always liked to use a small primer gun for small parts like this, finicky parts. And I've got a PRI Pro Light, which is actually quite a good primer gun. It doesn't seem to be as wet as this, depends which tip you've got in it, but I've got a 1.8, I've got a 1.6 and I've got a 1.4 for it. I normally like to use 1.8 for high build primer, which is what's recommended, 1.8 to 1.9. At the moment, my favourite primer gun would be the ANI F160, but considering this is half the cost of that, in fact less than half the cost, I think probably this would actually take it. As I say, I don't know about longevity, but considering this is a fair bit cheaper, then why not have a go? Why not have a go at this? It's quite funny because I get quite a few messages on Instagram mainly, sometimes on Facebook. And if you do message me on Facebook, on my Pete's Hobbies page, apologies if I take ages to get to you. Sometimes I look and there's a message or 2 or 3 messages that are a week old or thereabouts. And that's because for some reason, because my personal Facebook, your Facebook accounts are mixed together. For some reason it doesn't give me notifications that people have messaged me, so it's only by going there every now and again that I'll see something's come up and hasn't been answered. With Instagram it's a lot easier because they send you a message straight away to say that something popped up, so, and I'm always getting messages through. And what often crops up in some of these messages is the amount of debating people do when they're you're going to buy a spray gun. Now I can appreciate, and I appreciate I'm relatively privileged. I mean, I didn't pay for this gun, that's how privileged I am, but generally if something's quite expensive, I can imagine taking a fair bit of time to know which one you're going to buy. I can understand that. But some of the people are sending me different messages, and they may send me 6 or 7 messages, and they're obviously going in their head through all these different guns and like really fretting over the decision which gun to go for. And they're talking about a gun that's 40 US dollars. Now, I appreciate that to some people 40 US dollars is a lot of money. I do appreciate that. But generally, in the whole scheme of things that we're talking about with spray guns, etc., the new Segola's just come out. What's that? 800 US dollars. You're not talking about a lot of money. With a lot of these cheaper Chinese guns, you're not talking about a lot of money. So it's worth taking the chance to get the gun and try it, because half the time, well, more than half the time, you won't be disappointed. And certainly with something like this, I don't think you'll be disappointed at all. I have actually tried this, and I'm in the process of trying it a bit more. As I said at the start of the video, I've got a lot of stuff going on at the moment. I'm trying to fit in and try. But I've been trying this for clear coat as well, and it hasn't done that bad at all. In fact, it quite surprised me. I mean, the quality, as I say, of the cap and things like that is as good as the 4000B, the N-Tools 4000B. So it's reasonable quality. It's not rubbish, but it isn't the same quality as the PRD. And if people have got the PRDs and they're thinking this is the same for less, it's not. It's less for less, but still good performance for the money. While we're doing the primer stuff on this, I just use a Upol primer, which is 2025, I think, off my head. It's a high build primer. I try not to thin it down too much if I can, but I normally try and put a reasonably thin film on there, because as I've said before with other stuff, with a lot of motorcycle plastics, because there can be quite a lot of flex, I try not to put too much on there. With this, it's going to be sanded down anyway, so if you put a thin film, this was just two relatively light coats and then a sand to get it nice and flat, because there have been some repairs, there'd been decals on this fairing, and I wanted to get it all the way back. You will see it later on actually, because I can't remember what guns I've used, but we did it in a red, and I've got some new decals and that to go on. But yeah, certainly doing stuff like this, it proved to be absolutely fine. So I would never, I was just about to say, I would never spend a lot of money on a primer gun. But I actually have spent a lot of money on a primer gun. A PRI Pro Light was quite a lot of money on a primer gun. But knowing what I know now, I wouldn't spend a lot of money on a primer gun, because it just doesn't need it. If you're using it as a wet-on-wet primer gun, or a sealer gun where you're putting the primer on and the intent is not to sand the primer, then yes, I can imagine that, because obviously you want a really good finish. And I haven't used this for wet-on-wet or primer sealer, but I can imagine it will be absolutely fine, because I have used it for base coat and I have used it for clear coat, and it actually did really well. So I'm sure it will do in the 1.4 variant. I'm sure it will do well with primer sealer. But yeah, I mean, as I said, these guns, I've been surprised by the quality. When I first got the first one, which was the PRD717, I thought, well, hang on, I'm onto something here, because it was actually a very well made. Well, actually, I got the WP99, the PRD715, and the PRD625, I think. Yes, and they're all really well made. And I thought, well, I'm onto something here, because you're getting good quality guns at a reasonable price. They've made it much easier now in that they've got their own retail website, so it means that you can, look at the guns, find the price, find the delivery charge, and do it all automatically, pay for it with PayPal, and through it comes. So it does make it easier to try and tell you the pricing, etc. Because before it was different. I mean, I paid a bit cheaper for my guns. When I bought the guns, I paid a bit cheaper for my guns, but I paid more for the delivery than they charge on their website. So it swings and roundabouts, I guess. But yeah, certainly I've found with most of their stuff, it's been really good. And another thing, I've been talking to the lady that does their marketing, and I know that she mentioned to me back in January, I think it was January, or maybe the end of last year, that they're working on a minigun, a smaller form factor minigun, because I've got their PRD510, which again, I've got a video in the making. In fact, it could have been some of these parts I did with it, I'm not sure, but I've got a video in the making, and I'll put that up at some time. But they've got a small minigun coming out, a small form factor minigun, which they've been testing quite extensively. That's all I know. I've got no inside information. I don't even know what it looks like, but it should be released soon, so I'll be quite keen to get hold of that, because as far as I know, it's like in their PRD range, so it's their better quality range. So I'll be quite interested to see how that works. I always put, you see me mixing the this is a normal 2-to-1. I normally put a bit of flex additive to my fairing parts, even to the primer. I put it actually to all of it, the base, the primer and the clear coat, because I know some people just put it on clear coat. A lot of people say you don't need it in base coat, but I figure that if one of them was to let you down, then it's a lot of work. And as I said before, with fairing parts, there's so much work involved to getting them right, getting them ready for paint. It's very, very time consuming. So if you can save yourself work for the future, you might as well do it. But that's what I do. I had a little bit of I use a Upol one. I can't remember what it's actually called now. I think they only make one. And I just add about 10%. It depends where the panel is as well as to how much flex. I know some people add it to front bumpers on cars, front and back bumpers on cars, because you can get a bit of flex on those, but you normally get much more flex on motorcycle parts, especially pattern parts. If you're getting pattern parts for like a race bike or something, normally they're thinner than the OEM manufactured parts, so you'll find that they actually flex a bit more. So you might want to put a little bit more flex additive. It depends, what it is and where it is. Things like bike tanks and normally cowling at the back and things like that are not really subject to much vibration, so you can just do those normally. Often side panels and things like that, but certainly fairing panels where you've got the vibration of the bike and you've also got the wind, it's worth sticking some kind of flex additive. I've also left some of the bits where I'm mucking about with the bike bits to actually mount them, because one of the things you'll find about bike bits is it's very difficult to actually hold them in some way where you can get to all of it. And obviously the material that you're using is wet, but to get to all of it and then be able to let it dry before you actually move it. And I tend to like to do mine, or as you see, I'm using a central area here, and I'll do the things, dry them to a reasonable extent, and then move on to the next one. And all this was done with two full mixes of primer. So it was about 700 or 800 millilitres of primer altogether. There's quite a lot of coverage here, although the plastic parts are all small. When you add them together, it's actually quite a bit. It would be the equivalent to probably the side of a car in the amount of primer that all this lot takes. But you'll see at the end, it actually came out really well. And I was questioning in the end why I needed a GF3, because I always liked my little modified GF3 because I think it's a nice small form factor gun, but this thing seemed to work really well on a closed fan, and it's making me think that maybe I should try a few of my others. I have tried something like my Belaria. I've got a Belaria with a 1.8 tip and a Kiwami 4 with a 1.8 tip, and I don't really like them too much for that, because they just don't seem to put out enough material, whereas with this it was absolutely fine, but it seemed to have a very linear fan. So you notice that with all these Porphis guns, actually, there's a lot of adjustment on the fan, and by that I mean obviously you've only got full fan and you've got closed fan, but there's a lot of adjustment in between, and by that I mean you turn the control, when you get quite a lot of turning of the control to actually make a decreasement or an increasement in the fan size, whereas some guns, particularly I'm thinking now of the ANIs, the R150s, R150 160s and the F150s 160s, I always regard their fan adjustment, which is on the side as well like these, as being on and off, but you know, this doesn't do that. This seems to have a nice linear fan adjustment. So mucking about with things like this, it makes it really easy to do. As you can see, it does a really, really good result. You'll see these fairing parts later on. You see on the right hand side there, that's where I just put it to full fan, just so that you can get an idea of how big the fan is. But it puts out a lot of material, and I would certainly rather use this than something like the Kiwami 4 in 1.8, because that just doesn't seem to wet up enough. It just doesn't seem to flow enough material. And bear in mind, I've been using the same primer, etc. So it's comparing light with light. Anyway, guys, as always, we're coming to the end of the video. I did cut this a bit short, just so that it didn't make it a hugely long video. But thanks for watching as always. Cheers. Bye-bye.